History often feels like a chaotic stream: war, peace, progress, collapse, a swirling mess of names and dates. But what if there's a deeper rhythm beneath it all? What if the rise and fall of civilizations follows not just material causes, but conscious ones? This is the core insight of Giambattista Vico, an 18th century Italian philosopher who saw human history not as a straight line but as a spiral, a sequence of recurring ages shaped by collective consciousness. To Vico, we are not separate from history. We are history. Our myths, our laws, our art, our fallacies, all reflect the evolving self-understanding of the human spirit. In this video, we'll explore Vico's visionary concept of the cycles of history, how he saw society as a mirror of evolving mind, and how his work foreshadows modern ideas in Jungian psychology, cultural evolution, and even integral philosophy. This is the story of how consciousness moves through time. Born in Naples in 1668, Giambattista Vico lived in the shadow of the Enlightenment, an age dominated by rationalism and Newtonian science. But Vico felt something was missing. While Descartes and Newton were breaking the world into equations and clockwork mechanisms, Vico looked around and saw narrative, symbol, myth. He believed truth was not always found through abstract reasoning, but through understanding the structures of human meaning. His magnum opus, The New Science, 1725, aimed to uncover the universal laws that govern the development of civilizations, not by studying atoms, but by studying history, language, and imagination. In many ways, Vico was an early prophet of the human sciences, anticipating anthropology, psychology, and even systems theory. But more than anything, he asked, how does the human mind unfold over time? His answer? Through cycles. Vico's model of history centers on what he called the corsi e ricorsi, cycles and recycles. According to him, every civilization goes through three stages: the age of gods, where myth, ritual, and divine order dominate. People live in awe of nature, attributing forces to gods. The age of heroes, where power concentrates into elites, warriors, and aristocracies. Hierarchies form, honor rules, and early laws arise. The age of men, where rationalism and equality take root. Democracies form, skepticism rises, and secular culture flourishes. And after this, collapse, corruption, forgetting, until the cycle begins again. For Vico, this wasn't cynicism, it was cosmic rhythm. Each phase corresponds to a different level of collective consciousness. Mythical, symbolic, rational. Each stage is necessary and incomplete on its own. The tragedy of modernity for Vico was its arrogance, believing it had escaped the cycle, that rationality was the final form of civilization. But no phase is final. Even logic forgets its roots, and when that forgetting deepens, societies fall, only to rise again, reborn through myth and renewal. What makes Vico radical is not just that he saw history as cyclical. Many ancient traditions did that. It's that he believed consciousness itself unfolds in patterns, and that civilizations are its outward expression. In this sense, history is not just events. It is the externalization of the psyche. The age of gods corresponds to a childlike, intuitive mind, rich with awe and metaphor. The heroic age mirrors adolescence, ruled by passion, glory, and hierarchy. The age of men reflects adulthood, critical, abstract, bureaucratic. Vico was perhaps the first to suggest that the inner life of humanity maps onto outer culture. Think about it. In your own life, you move from magical thinking to rebellion and passion, to rational structure, and eventually, perhaps, to crisis and renewal. So too with nations. History is the collective dream of consciousness as it grows, forgets, and remembers. This insight connects Vico to modern thinkers like John Gebser, Ken Wilber, and even Jung, all of whom saw cultural history as evolution in disguise, the psyche working itself out across generations. Vico also argued that the earliest stages of consciousness were not less evolved, they were differently evolved. In the age of gods, people didn't speak in logic, they spoke in myth. Lightning wasn't just electricity, it was the hand of Zeus. The river wasn't just water, it was a living spirit. To modern minds, this seems primitive, but Vico saw it as poetic wisdom, a deep, intuitive way of relating to the world. In fact, he believed poetry was older than prose, symbol older than science. The imagination, he claimed, is the first faculty through which consciousness knows anything at all. In this way, myth is not fantasy, it is a language of being. And as civilizations progress, they forget this original way of knowing. They become trapped in abstraction. Vico warned that a society that forgets its mythic roots loses its soul, and eventually collapses under the weight of its own cynicism. This is why art, ritual, and memory matter. They are not luxuries. They are the anchors of collective consciousness. So why do civilizations fall? For Vico, the answer is spiritual amnesia. When the age of men reaches its peak in logic, law, and control, it begins to hollow out. Morality becomes utility. Language becomes manipulation. Institutions forget the people they serve, and eventually, systems rot. But Vico didn't see this as the end. He saw it as Recurrence, the great return. Just as sleep renews the mind, collapse renews the collective soul. New myths arise, old truths are remembered in new forms, a sacred spark returns. This is why Vico's thought is not pessimistic. It's archetypal. It teaches us that decline is not failure, but prelude. Every descent is also a preparation for ascent. In this way, Vico's philosophy parallels the death-rebirth motif found in alchemy, shamanism, and psychology. In fact, some call him the first Western philosopher to hint at what we now call collective unconscious evolution. When the old world dies, the seed of the next is already sprouting. Here's where things get even more relevant. What if Vico's insights aren't just about the past, but about now? In a world of technological acceleration, cultural breakdown, and spiritual confusion, it feels like we're nearing the end of a cycle. Rationalism has hit its limits. Systems are cracking. Meaning is hard to find. According to Vico's model, we're at the tail end of the age of men, the phase of maximum abstraction and minimum soul. But that means something else is coming. A new mythos. A return to symbol, story, and collective renewal. We are not headed for oblivion, but a spiritual reset. And this is where conscious history begins. What if we're not just being shaped by the cycle, but participating in it? What if we can live more consciously, understanding our place in the larger spiral of time? What if each of us is a cell in the body of history, and how we dream, act, and awaken shapes what comes next? Giambattista Vico saw what few dared to imagine. That history is not random, but rhythmic. That civilizations rise and fall not just from economics or politics, but from the evolving inner life of humanity. His cycles remind us that decline is not death. It's the turning of the spiral. His reverence for myth, for imagination, for memory, reminds us that our culture is made of meaning, not machinery. And most of all, his vision calls to each of us to remember that we are history, not as spectators, but as participants. So as this great spiral turns once again, the question isn't just where we're going, it's who we're becoming. Are you ready to remember the myth, to help renew the soul of the world? If so, you're in the right place. Subscribe, share, and let's keep unfolding this great story together.